Hello, hello. Welcome to the Scoop Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Jenny and Dana. We're so excited about this podcast. We're planning on sharing tips, tricks, advice for upping your polo game, whether you're a brand new player or an experienced old head like the rest of us, getting ready for NAs or your next competitive tournament. We've got something for everybody. And we're super stoked to share some of the biggest mistakes happening in our own game and others, and ways that we think you can address those. But before we dive in, we want to do a quick shout out to Donata, our sponsor for this podcast. Dana, tell me, what is your favorite Donata head?
I love this one. This is what I've been using for the last several years, but I'm really excited about this little guy. It's just a little bit shorter. And it's going on. It's going on this weekend, and gonna see how that one feels. But love the taper with the kind of old school Guardian's head, Tutori-sized end, and then the larger scoop end, because I'm bad with the scoop end and I need that big one. So love that head. What's yours?
So my favorite, I've always been a huge fan of the Barilla. So this has been like my go-to since Donata started making them. I freaking love this head. Great scoop end. It has really good wear too. So with rotations, I can get a really good season out of the head, and I just love it. So thank you, Donata, for making amazing equipment, and Jordan for keeping us like in stock with all the things that we basically need to play polo. So exciting. This is our very first episode, and we are going to be talking about the biggest mistakes that we see in bike polo and our take on how folks can fix those mistakes. So first up is how people grip the mallet. What do you see at polo camp, and what have you seen out in the wild in terms of like issues with grip?
The one that makes me kind of scrunch up and go, ooh, every time I see it is the pointer finger, right? About half the people that start playing start with that pointer finger extended down the mallet, and not everybody realizes that it's a problem, but what this will do is limit you in the future on wrist mobility and limit the types of passes that you can generate. And then in addition to that, for injuries, a little greater if you've got that finger extended out there.
Yeah, I'll kind of tell a little story here because when I first started playing, I started playing with my index finger extended down the shaft to stabilize the mallet. And it took me about 2 years to realize that it was a problem. And the way I figured it out was I was watching more experienced players in my club being able to do what I call a scarecrow pass, which is like an ability to just kind of like hop it across the court to a teammate, or even just like diagonal behind you and do it instantaneously, right? And I was like, why can't I do this? I looked at their grip and I'm like, no one else is extending their finger to stabilize the shaft. So I decided to retrain myself. It took a solid 3 weeks, but once I kind of broke the habit, it just opened up so many options for me in how I handle the ball. It also helped with I was having problems a lot with like tennis elbow, and that helped a ton because what happens when you extend, it also encourages a lot of ball control with your wrist instead of with your arm. So people tend to overuse their wrist a lot when they're using their index finger. The way I grip now is my thumb is what extends down the shaft. I usually have my thumb pretty much in line with the closed end of my mallet. And then I'm just kind of doing different types of rotations with my arm in order to change the position of the head. And sure, when I'm tripoding, my index finger might be, extended down. And that's fine. And there might be times where you do have to change your grip. But the point is have the index finger wrapped around the shaft instead of extended down. It's funny because every other sport talks about grip, right? Like tennis has very specific ways. They have different names for their grips. Golf, right? Like they all do, but we've never really discussed it.
Yeah, and we have so many fundamentals that when we welcome someone into their first pickup game, I have a tendency to let everything go and just go like, you go see how it feels, because we're just so stoked to have a brand new player there that starting to correct them and correct like little fundamental things are very like, I don't want to do that yet. I want you to have a great time. And then I'll forget down the road to say, hey, watch that, or hey, careful with that. That's maybe not going to be such a good thing for you in the future. So
yeah, it's hard because again, like, because it's not really discussed, right? And we don't really have a formal, like, this should be your basic grip. What I call like the neutral grip is what I called it, which is like, you can use your thumb, right, to stabilize, keep all your other fingers wrapped around like the shaft of the mallet. That's your baseline grip. That's where you can be the most relaxed. I even talked when I was doing in polo camp about how to have a relaxed shoulder, not being too forward, right? Learning where your resting state should be. As an old lady, I'm very much about efficiency and using as little energy as possible, because I play a lot of tournaments, and to get deep into a tournament, you have to be thinking about your energy consumption and what's going to wear out parts of your body that are going to hurt you in a final, right? So even just your grip, changing that can completely change how you play polo. So that's one of the takeaways for this is learn what a basic neutral grip is. And if you're currently playing with an extended finger down the shaft, I know it's really challenging to change that. It can be done. I'm proof. It can definitely be corrected. Even if you've been doing it for a couple of years, consider changing your grip so that you can open up some new options for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of leads in, I think, perfectly to our next number 2 big mistake that we see is ball handling. And again, this happens at the rookie level, new player level, all the way to advanced. We make the same mistakes as well. But part of it is, again, similar to the grip, right? The way that we teach ball handling, we don't really teach it. Like you were saying, like a lot of times when someone's starting new, it's like you don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want to start correcting every single little thing that you're doing. So sometimes they start picking up poor habits. And I'm curious, what are some of the habits you've seen that maybe you had to deal with at polo camp or that you've had to deal with in your own clubs to help fix?
What we've noticed a lot with newer players, especially as they're starting and watching maybe some footage of some fancy European players, there's a lot of interest in how do I scoop and carrying with the scoop end and ball jointing, and kind of defaulting to using that open end of the mallet to carry the ball around. And rather than getting back to that fundamental, look around the court and do what you need to do and not be making a bunch of extra touches or not having it fall off the mallet head while you're carrying it around. And then the other one I see a ton of, not keeping it up near that front axle. A lot of folks I see, especially starting out, want to keep it right in line with them, like they're walking a dog and keeping it on a short leash, rather than letting it run out in front a little bit. And that leads to one little error means that ball's behind you and you are having a heck of a time getting it back.
Yes, that was like a lot of the stuff that I was addressing at polo camp when I was teaching ball handling and ball possession. A lot of the things I saw at polo camp that I was correcting was exactly what you said, which was using the open end to control the ball. And the way I explained it to folks is the broad side of your mallet has the most surface area, right? It is probably one of the most forgiving ways that you can control the ball. The open end of the mallet requires more precision and more finesse. And I always tell them every time you have to use the open end, you almost have to look at the ball longer because it's less forgiving. When you're deep in a tournament on second day, you're deep into the double LM, right? What are the first things to go when you're tired? It's finesse and precision. So any of those skills, and you start having issues with your tennis elbow starts flaring up, right?
Yep.
So any of those types of things, if that's what you're over relying on, I see it happen all the time in tournaments. Like people who are primarily using their open end, they start getting tired, or if they primarily rely on scooping, again, a very precise and finesse skill, and they can't fall back to their fundamentals, right? So if there's any piece of advice I could give somebody, it's that you should be focusing much more of your time in doing basic broadside mallet dribbling, being able to have consistent touches on your mallet, right, on the ball, and learning how to do it quickly, learning how to manipulate the ball, with the broadside. And then you were talking a little bit about scooping. I feel like I have so many feelings about scoops.
They're delightful.
Which is hilarious. Isn't it hilarious though? Like, this podcast is called The Scoop, and I don't really scoop. I told my campers when they're like, "Are you going to teach us how to scoop, Jenny?" And I'm like, "No," but I have a reason. So hopefully by the time you're done with camp, you won't be mad at me for not teaching you. But I'm really curious. Are you much of a scooper? Do you use scooping much in your game?
I do a ton of it in pickup. You won't really see me doing it in a tournament for that reason. It's super fun. It's fun to be able to throw the ball around. It's a interesting way to get your hand-eye coordination better and better. And it's fun to have in the pocket when you need it. But if it becomes... Actually, my story with scooping is the same as almost everybody's. I saw people do it. I learned to do it. And then I did it all the darn time. And it was like the go-to thing. You still see people doing this. Every time they get the ball, they've got to pick it up and then either throw it over their wheel or throw it back in front of them. And it's not a bad thing. It's a fun thing to do. It's a fun little skill to have, and it can be used effectively. I mean, some of the best teams in the world use it quite a bit. But if you're trying to build fundamentals and win games later in the tournament, if you are relying on that heavily, it's something that can go away pretty quick once that forearm gets worn out, is what I found. And I ended up realizing that, hey, there's a reason that the vets, when I was first starting to play, taught me that you'd be better served by broadside touches and by practicing that up and down the court and slowly increasing the speed around the court until you're at full game speed and passing it back and forth to yourself onto your bike, going forward and back as far as you can reach, really trying to expand your area of influence rather than practicing being able to move it over your bike with the scoop. It's fun to do. I really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah. And I think that's the really important distinction. There are 2 points that I think are really important that I want to make here. The first one is that scooping, I would never say that you shouldn't do it. If you're somebody who's trying to increase your ball handling skills, which everyone should always be working on their ball handling, right? So your basic fundamentals should be learning exactly what Dana just said, being able to move it at speed, being able to get very nice touches on the ball with the broadside to move it exactly where you want it to be instantly without having to scoop it there. And then using the scoop to add flavor. It's like the flair, the style to your game, and to bring it out once in a while when it's like a way to kind of do something creative on the court, but it shouldn't be your go-to every single time.
Yeah, and no shade on anyone who likes to scoop all the time, but if you are someone who likes to scoop all the time, there might be a little secret supercharge that you can do by spending half your time at pickup, before pickup or in between games, running up and down the court, touching back and forth with the broadside. You might find that really helps speed up your handling through the rest of it. There's a lot of examples of really great players who use the scoop in their game a lot and go very far in tournaments and win worlds. Those people also have super duper locked in fundamentals, shoot well,
exactly,
handle on the broadside well, manipulate their bicycle and work on their fitness and do all the things that are also fundamental to the game. So
one of the ways I always explain it too is, scooping is like the icing on the cake. You have to have a cake first. And so having icing without a cake is a little much. Just make sure. I think that's like the thing. Exactly. Like, scooping is awesome, but make sure you've got some cake to go with that icing. And like the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit about like ball handling. And I think this kind of brings all of these pieces together that we're kind of talking about, which is like being able to use your broadside, not overusing the open end. One of the reasons why that's so important too is because a lot of times when people are using the open end of their mallet to manipulate the ball, their head is down so much more. So the other thing in terms of advice I would get is learn to touch the ball as little as possible. That's one of the things I taught in camp is every time you touch the ball, you have to look down. So if you can touch it as little as possible, that means your head gets to be up and you can scan more and become way more aware of the court, your surroundings, and make choices. So learning, that's another skill as you're learning to do those broadside dribble skills, like building those up, learning to touch it, turning on your dominant side, turning on your dark side. Try to touch the ball as little as possible to get the job done. So and then practice getting your head up. Those are really important skills that literally, it's amazing how something that simple can take your game up from just level you up instantly.
That's something I'm absolutely still working on, and everyone on my NA's team is actively working on how much time can I spend with my head up.
Yep. See, so I know everyone thinks we're perfect little angels, and
we're perfect little angels.
Yeah, we are perfect little angels. We're perfect little angels who are also still working on our polo skills. Awesome. So this actually works perfectly into our next topic, which is number 3, not using the whole court. So Dana, you want to start us off? What do you see in terms of either rookies or intermediate advanced players possibly not using the full court?
That's
how that hurts their polo.
Great topic. What it might look like to me, or when I find myself doing it, is when I'm under a lot of pressure and I am maybe in some waning minutes of the game, maybe we're down a point, and I am tunnel visioned and I'm really trying to make a goal happen, and rather than stretch things out, go reset, I'm going to go towards goal. And I'm probably going to get pushed out if the defense is doing their job and carried over to the side. And I'm going to look up and the goal's going to be way over here behind me, and I'm going to be in the corner, and I'm going to have a defender on me that doesn't want me to leave that corner. And I have just successfully burned another 10 seconds for my team and put the ball in a situation where it's 50-50 that it probably gets stripped from us and we have to go get a hold of that ball again.
Yep. Basically similar. The biggest mistakes I see myself and also like other, especially experienced players, intermediate players, is when we get desperate, especially in tournaments, and we're like, we gotta score, right? There's that desperation. All of a sudden, it's like we start passing into traffic, was what I call it. It's like there's so much congestion around the crease, right? And there's just like this, it's almost like we forget that there's all this court behind us that we could be using to stretch and create space. Space is your friend. And you as a team have the ability to create space. You don't have to rely on the other team to do it for you. That's actually in your control. And so one of the things that I'm constantly working on is, how do I reset the ball? If I have the ball, how do I take it past the midline just to give myself and my teammates some breathing room and hopefully get the defense a little bit out of position? It's so hard to make something work when everyone is congested around the crease. So that's like the big thing that I see a lot of, is just like the lack of resetting the ball and passing into traffic, or instead of open space, and just not spreading out. You have an entire court. And I feel like sometimes, myself included, a lot of players it's like they're allergic to coming home. It's almost like we feel like it's like a failure, like, oh, we failed as an offense if we're coming back here, right? No, that's a smart play. You're trying to maneuver and catch the other team out of position. And if you're all clogged up in the crease on their side of the court, you're just not... Bad things are more likely to happen than good, is my take.
Yeah. Another way it manifests that I see every now and then is a player really wanting the pass and trying to get that pass by being right on your drop and coming in really close to you. When you have pressure on, it's not super safe to make a pass that's very close to you when your teammate's very close to you, when there's a lot of pressure on. I'm generally looking for a pass that's stretched out further away that my teammate has time to get to before the other team. I'm hunting for somebody that's going to go give some space, go look for a pass option, and give us the opportunity to spread out their defense and make some room.
I feel like what you're naming right there too is if someone's right on your tail, a drop pass is great, but there's got to be some space there. Because if they're right on top of you and you also have defensive pressure, you're not actually passing into space, right? You're passing, but there's defense right there still. That's why I think just like thinking in terms of like, how do I get open for a pass? Getting to open space is way better than just being right on top of your own player. So those are like more intermediate advanced player type of issues when it comes to not using the full court. One of the challenges I see with rookies, so if rookies are listening to this, I think one of the things you can take away, you can also take away a lot from what we were just talking about, but I think sometimes we get over focused on the goal. I have the ball, I'm going to ride straight towards the goal. That's what I see a lot of rookies doing when they first start playing. And part of my job when I'm coaching at home in my own club or at polo camp is to teach them some alternatives that sometimes to move forward, you have to go back. So learning how to offensively, if you have the ball, how to rinse off defense, which means you're going to have to turn around. It might be turning on your dominant side. I'm a lefty, so I turn to the left, or my dark side, which is crossing over and turning that way. But the goal when you're rinsing is to keep your bike between the ball and the defensive player. I always tell folks, remember, it isn't just about riding straight up court. You can ride sideways, you can ride home, you can ride in any direction in order to create space. And I think the key for rookies to be able to move away from just like riding straight from the goal is increasing their ball handling and learning how to rinse. So learning how to turn in circles confidently with the ball. Once you learn those two skills, as soon as you meet defensive pressure, right, instead of just riding and dabbing or getting ridden into the wall, you have some other options.
Yeah, the rinse off the defense or the go home, the positive thing is you've maintained possession of the ball. That's a win. Bringing a defender with you is also a win. It's not a goal, but it's a big win. If they turn back and go reset in their own end and you've still got possession of the ball, hey, that's still a +1. You've still got possession. Possession's so important and really generally hard to get from a solid team.
Yes.
If you maintain possession of that ball, that's far better than getting it 3/4 of the way up the court and getting it turned over while you're facing north and they're facing south.
Part of it's also just remembering, like, as the ball carrier, what your job is. And it is to set up and create plays, but your main job is to maintain possession of the ball, right? And to take shots if it's there. Just getting it up the court is not the main goal. It's to create a play with your team. And sometimes that's going to require you as the person who's carrying the ball to take it home in order to maintain possession, because that's your number one goal.
Yeah. One of the things I find myself ending up in that left-hand side corner, and I kind of attribute it to overuse of this shot, the over the bar shot, and feeling like that's going to be there.
Your backhand?
The backhand over the bars shot that you often take from very deep. So I've started keeping myself from taking that shot and trying to eliminate that from my frequent use things so that I don't go get drawn to that corner. It's almost like a magnet because that shot's really fun to do, but it's sometimes not the most effective, and it usually means that you're deep in the corner, you're burned, and when you take that shot, everyone else on the court's deeper than you are, and you're setting up a 2-on-1 with your own team.
So many things to be thinking about. Like I said, polo is kind of like a game of chess. So moving on to our number 4 top mistake that we see both Dana and I struggle with this as well. So no shade thrown here. And that is playing the ball instead of playing the bike. I have campers who are always like, Jenny, I will never forget, because I used to teach defense at polo camp. They're like, I will never forget you screaming at me, Brett Wheel. I'm like, yep, that's my go-to. Tell me a little bit about what you see some of the problems around playing the ball instead of the bike. What happens when people do that?
The ball is smoke and mirrors. A player's mallet is smoke and mirrors. And what I mean there is it doesn't tell you where that player is going. And especially when you start watching scoopier teams and people who are doing a lot with the ball, even if it's not scooping, if it's moving it around a whole lot, they will steer you. They will try to take you a different direction, especially if you're in a one-on-one situation with them and you're trying to figure out where they're going. I spent a lot of my first year or two of polo watching the ball and getting absolutely destroyed by a couple of players that were very good. So playing that ball or committing to trying to get that ball from the offensive player, I see that burn more number one defenders than almost anything else. And the reason it's such a problem, it's a problem on its own. It's a problem if you get beat, but it's also a problem with your whole team because your number two player is expecting you to keep that front wheel. And if you don't, they're likely already committed to watching for that pass. And if you get burned, you've given almost 90% of the time, you've given a forehand shot on your own net to that player. You can watch some of the Timaru games where we got beat by the Timaru team over there, and that's exactly what happened to me about 3 times in a row. And it was still 3v3 back then, so I couldn't get subbed off, but I would have gotten subbed off for sure in that game.
I feel like what you're describing there too is you can, in this situation, still be facing the same direction. We're not talking about a head-to-head challenge yet. We're going to get to that. But right now, you're just talking about when you're playing technically front wheel defense, you're facing the same direction as the opponent who has the ball. But instead of getting into what I say, position first, ball second, it's your job to get in front of them. Your goal is to get in front of this player so they cannot get a shot on net and that you get to control the line that they take. And if instead you're right up next to them and you're like, oh, there's the ball, I'm going to try and take a poke at it. You've already lost because usually in order for you to make a poke, you have to stop pedaling. And that then gives them an opportunity to start pedaling faster. And all it takes is for them to get their front wheel ahead of you and you're burnt. It's a way harder for you to regain that position. And I do this all the time, even though every time I do it, I'm just like, God damn it, Jenny, you know better. It's difficult to not become mesmerized by the ball and their mallet. And one of the things I've tried to start focusing on is instead of looking at the ball, I look at the player's body. The best way to get your brain to switch away from looking at the ball and trying to make a poke is just don't look at it. Look at the player, look at their body, because their body's going to tell you where they're going to go. And when I do that, a lot of times, weirdly, I get a touch on the ball because as soon as they go to pass it, my mallet, I'm using my peripheral vision, I'm able to get a touch on a ball that I should not have been able to. But because I'm like looking at the full picture, right? I'm looking at their body and in a good position. I'm in front of them. It's just so much easier, right? You're going to force them to pass the ball, which is good for your team. And they're not going to get around you, which is the main goal. Your job is to make sure that they cannot get a clean forehand shot on your goal. And it's hard not to forget that.
Yeah, that's a great job description. Your job is to push them to the outside and keep them from making the optimal decision, which is being able to shoot forehand on you. And talk with your team. Not everyone plays defense the same way, but set expectations for what happens and then follow through on those expectations, and that will help a lot more than everyone trying to bite on the ball.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about like playing front wheel defense and how there are pitfalls to over focusing on the ball, even when you're playing front wheel defense, right? Focusing on the ball, making a pick of the ball when you're not in front of them first. Get in front of them. Then if you slow them down and you can get a little poke, fine, but don't over poke, right? Because again, you're getting caught up in those smoke and mirrors. Don't get seduced by the ball. You don't want to lose out on your primary job. And then there's the other defensive tactic, which is a head-to-head challenge pick. The offensive player is coming towards your goal. You are facing them off and you try to make a pick on the ball. Some players love this tactic. I think there are pros and cons in terms of when you should use this and when you should not. As a lefty, I can't do it unless it's another lefty, because if I tried, it was funny because I'd have people who play with me, you need to challenge the ball carrier. I'm like, I'm a lefty. Our mallets are literally on opposite sides. That doesn't make sense. So if you're a lefty and you're trying to do this on a righty, it doesn't work, okay? So don't try that. But a righty and righty or lefty, when, if at all, Dana, do you think people should be head-on-head challenging people?
If your name is Carlos from Salt Lake City, you should do it every single time because you're amazing at it, and everyone else should turn and ride with the wheel.
Unless you're Carlos and you are a second defender.
Yes.
That's like the one thing I would say. So this is my take. Yes, Carlos is amazing at it. I love watching Carlos on his bike. It's like watching a graceful ballerina. His ability to get touched. I don't know how he does it. I think he's made a deal with the devil, is all I can say. No, it's his skill. He's very skilled. But one of the things that I always say is the only time that I think that doing a head-to-head challenge, if you're down and there's only a couple more minutes in the game and you need to get that goddamn ball, right? More aggressive defensive tactics might work, but only if you're defense position number 1. If you are defensive position 2, you should not be doing it, because I will show videos. I will put some links in here of where both defensive players did head to head, and all the player did was ride around them every freaking time. It is a high risk, high reward situation. And if you get beat, you're pretty much fucked. Sure, you can pedal back hard, but if you're the second defender, the last person between you and the goalie, there's no pedaling back from that. It's a guaranteed one-on-one with your goalie. So first of all, you've got to be solid at your front wheel defense. Don't be over practicing head to head at pickup. Make sure that you're conscious of how you're playing your defense and practice like head to head, but understand when you should apply it and when you shouldn't. Because I think that I've seen so many teams, or even like at some of the most recent tournaments, people did that as the second defender, and then they got scored on because there was no one else to defend the goalie. And the goalie can't do everything. They try, but...
Yeah, Eastside qualifiers going on today. I watched, won't name any names, but I watched a team bite on the ball today and give that front wheel, and someone got the go-ahead goal in that game because they did that. And these are experienced players at a high-level tournament.
And I'm guilty. Dana's guilty. We all need to practice this in order to up our game. And actually, I don't know if you watched any of the games from Lyon. They had a tournament just last weekend. It's really fun to watch how the defensive players play defense. They're very front wheel focused and they're very good at it. So watching how they play, I think, is another really great way to see some of those examples on how to play really solid front wheel. And speaking of that too, I think this kind of goes into our next top mistake, which is for the defensive position number 2. Okay, so this is mistake number 5 that we see. And it's, again, the same theme. Over focus on the ball. So in this particular situation, what we're talking about is a defensive player who's position number 2, so covering the pass, and being over focused on picking the pass. And what I mean by this, and one of the things that I've been trying to work on in my own polo, is thinking about, again, it's like a game of chess. You have to be thinking number of steps ahead. If I focus on the pick and I miss it, because that's usually mean I'm facing away from my goal in order to get that pick, right? A lot of times. And I miss, then the pass is going to get completed. And now that person is most likely going to have a one-on-one with a goalie. So one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, instead of what is my job as defensive position number 2, isn't picking the pass. It's like a secondary job. But my first job is to be ready to take on a front wheel position on pass. That is my job. So what I've been always trying to think about now is like, how am I positioned? And if the pass is complete, can I quickly come in and start playing the ball carrier and as a defensive position 1, basically?
This is my favorite position, the 2 position. It's the most fun for me to play. I really like being there, and I enjoy the pressure of it, how much you can influence the game by being in that position, and how much your decisions matter in that position. It seems like it's a little bit more passive than the 1 position, but you're really on the entire time trying to make sure that you're in the position, and you're really trying to anticipate what is about to happen and anticipate that decision that you're going to need to make after that next thing happens. And it's a lot of fun. You can make really costly mistakes there, and we all do it. And it's the best thing that you can do is talk with your team about expectations and about what you expect the one player to do and, what they're going to do if that doesn't work, so that you all kind of know ahead of time what that's going to look like. Everybody plays it a little differently. You can watch teams and how they keep their 1 and 2 cycling. Some people keep it very kind of set, and you'll see some teams that do it very fluid, where a player's coming in and out and constantly putting more pressure on it. Very fun position to play, but you've got to be pretty conservative playing it and trying to pick passes, because it can be pretty disastrous. Like, you're the most likely player to give the other team a one-on-one with your goaltender as that number 2 player.
Yeah. I love watching other sports to find applicable strategies and just like terminology to apply to bike polo. And one of the things I stumbled on recently is this term called surfing in hockey, which is a defensive position in anticipation of the pass. As the pass is happening, there's a defensive player that's kind of marking a couple of other opponents, and they're anticipating the pass. And as the pass is happening, they dip in and they catch the front. And it's the exact same thing that we are trying to do in bike polo, which is to get in position in front of them before making a poke at the puck. And they call it surfing because it's about catching the wave. To catch the wave and to surf properly, you have to be in front of the wave. If you get caught up in the wave, you're going to go for a tumble. If you miss the wave, you're going to be behind and there's no surfing, right? So I really love this idea of surfing and thinking about it in terms of, how do I come in and, like, they talk about closing the space, closing the gap between you and the other player. And the way they do it is they have this like little bit of an angle. They come in at a swoop. But in bike polo, the way I would imagine it is you kind of have to come in with both hands on your bars and be pedaling and come in and be able to swoop in front of that wheel to catch them, close the gap and catch the wave, surf. So that's one of the things that I've been playing with at pickup, which has been fun, is really trying to think about, as this position 2, it's my job to catch that next wave, that pass. And to do that, I have to be in front of them, right? If I get caught up, there's handlebars, etc., they're going to beat me. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong. If I get behind, again, I'm beat. So it's like that precision, that moment of catching that wave, that's really important. And I don't know, it's been kind of a fun thing to play with.
Yeah, I like that one, because you will see a lot of players outrun the wave, especially when they're in a one-on-one situation too. That was a problem that I had early on. We were talking a little bit earlier about someone one-on-one behind you and passing the ball to themselves back and forth across their front wheel, trying to get you to bite one way or the other. If you never slow down and you just keep watching that, you've taken them all the way to your goaltender. And so slowing down and knowing when to slow down, to where if you scrub speed too soon, they're going to burn around you. If you don't scrub speed fast enough, you've taken them all the way into your crease.
Yes. And I think that's the thing. It's an interesting problem for those particular positions, because it is like this delicate balance of trying to close down the space, right? You don't want to give them so much room that they can do whatever they want. But if you stop pedaling too soon, then it gives them an opportunity to get around you, right? So that is one of the things that I have been exploring in my own game, is how can we use some of these tactics from hockey, for example, like how they strategically move, how they have this kind of like arc as they come in. I don't know yet if it's going to work well. It's something I'm playing around with, but it does at least point to the importance of closing the gap without allowing them to get around you. And that's a tricky thing to do. It takes a lot of practice and experimentation to, like, how do I do this? And then too, also, like, it depends on the player. There are certain players that are faster than others. Every time I play in a tournament, I have to adjust my tactics to the player, just because some people are faster or they just have different techniques. So that's also part of the thing you have to be able to do too, is like adjust for the different types of players you're playing.
People who do box jumps when they go to the gym, just can't stand those people. They always get the jump on you.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it, right? Like, we all need to go to the gym, start doing box jumps so we have a bit more power and pep in our step when we try and get around somebody offensively. Awesome. Okay. So last but not least, number 6 is lack of court awareness. This is something that I have especially been trying to work on this season. And it's been really fun. It's one of those things that as you start reflecting and looking at your, like watching how you're playing and where you think you have some areas, it really helps you start understanding your own gaps, and like your unknowns become more known is the way I like to think about it. And I've been surprised. I shouldn't be surprised, but I've been very happily surprised at how much of a problem I have with court awareness and when, and how changing some of my behavior has really opened up my ability to have better court awareness. So I'm really excited to talk about this one. Curious, for your polo, what kinds of issues have you experienced in terms of court awareness?
For my play, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I find myself in the far corner a lot. And so it's something I'm really trying to work on. It's kind of okay to go there if you go there with a plan and you know where your teammates are and you know where that pass is going to go to. It's not the best place in the world to be, but I rewatched a lot of footage of previous games and look at those things, and that's the biggest sin that I see in my play is under pressure, going in deep, no drop, no pass, no plan, just going into the corner and hoping somebody's going to give me a window at the thing. And then
you're like, maybe they'll open up and they'll just let me ride.
Yeah, they might just give me a shot. Yeah. And I find that those games I have way less memory of too, that I cannot remember doing that. And it's because of that like tunnel vision focus that you up in when under pressure.
It's so interesting that you say this. So this is one of the big things that I've been focused on. So smack in the middle in April was my first tournament of the season. And going into the tournament, I had one goal. I play really poorly on small courts. I'm a lefty. I really rely on space to kind of have time to get my head up, right? And so I've always really struggled on small courts and getting pinched on the boards. And it's always so frustrating. And I'm just like, God damn it. Like, why do I keep getting pinched on the boards? Oh, there's a very obvious answer to this, by the way. And the answer is my head's down, right? You're going to get pinched if you don't know that there's a defensive player coming. And so one of my personal goals for that tournament was anytime I went to collect the ball behind my own net, behind like on our side or even on the boards, whenever I went in, my goal was I just had to get my head up just once before. And then as soon as I touched the ball, I started moving once after. That was the only requirement that I had for myself. Dana, I cannot tell you how much better I played and how much more confident I felt. It was like night and day. I was like, how is it something so simple? It's getting your, I mean, it sounds stupid saying it, but like, you don't even know that your head's down. You were just saying, I don't even remember doing it. It's like this tunnel vision. And one of the things I was playing with Daniel and Marian from Mexico City, my teammates. And we
y'all
had
did
this
great at that tournament, by the way, too. I watched some games from that.
It was such a fun.
Y'all ended up third or fourth or?
No, I don't even remember. We might have been fifth.
Okay.
I can't remember. But I was really happy with how we played. I was very pleased. And we had a really great team discussion Friday night. We were talking a lot about the things that get us in that position where we have tunnel vision, right? And one of the things I notice about myself, like emotionally, is I kind of get this, it's like almost like I get small. And when I get small and I feel small and I start feeling timid, my head comes down too. And so you can't always control what kind of emotions you're having on the court, but you can control your behavior. So I was like, okay, anytime I start feeling small and timid, all I have to do is just get my head up. I just have to look. And it's amazing how much it just helps expand you. And I just think that like court awareness is really just about learning to get your head up and scanning. And I've read a couple of articles too. They've done some research in soccer. They do a lot of analysis to see like the top players scan way more than other players. And their completion rate of passes and other things is 12% higher than any other players. And they attribute it mostly to the fact that before anyone even receives a pass, they're constantly scanning the entire field. These quick little glances, they're just making around the court to just gather information about where's the defense, how much time do I have, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just so cool. Again, I feel silly saying it because it's so freaking obvious, But even me, I've been playing for 11 years, and even I don't always do a very good job of scanning the court and making sure I'm not going into a corner completely oblivious to what's happening behind me. So that's one of the things I've been trying to practice a ton in pickup. Like I overscan, if anything. I'm like, okay, just learn to get your head around. You're going into a corner with your back to the court. You should do a scan before you go in. And then as soon as you get the ball, I get another quick scan in just to double check that I still have time? Where's my teammate? And that way, you can actually have a plan, which you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
It isn't like going in without a plan. It's going in basically blind without understanding what's happening behind you.
That's right. Not giving yourself that millisecond to do it. But it doesn't feel like that when you've got super heavy pressure on. It's kind of that it never gets any easier, you just go faster thing. Where
yes.
Okay, now I'm under more pressure, so now I just go in the corner and I'm just going to scrub off that look around so that I can save time. But by doing that, now every decision you made is just a complete and utter crapshoot. It could be a good decision, it could be a bad decision, but you're probably going to lose the ball, right? And so it's definitely, I've been playing around with that a little bit too, of, hey, I've got to force myself to look up. I think you mentioned it at camp, and I was like, that is the probably best nugget of information and best way to supercharge the game is having that head up, having that scan, and just making that a drill that I do anytime I'm either playing pickup or even if I'm doing solo polo and knocking the ball around between pickup games is once I collect that ball, look, go, look, go. I feel like that's the biggest difference too in those higher level games, getting into Sunday games, is all of a sudden like you had the time at your qualifier probably to stop and look once you collected the ball and come up with a plan. That space is there. But what I've noticed is I don't have the space or time anymore to make that look and come up with a plan after I collect the ball. So it's not even there. It's not even an option. That ball will be stripped if you don't know what you're doing with it before you go collect it.
Yeah, we kind of get in these bad habits of not really scanning. And what we're finding when you go to NAs or these higher level tournaments, you're not going to have the luxury of time. And so you have to be able to you have to already know what you're going to do with that ball on the first touch. And this is like something that I've been trying to practice at pickup is instead of just collecting the ball, right? If as the pass is coming to me, I'm already positioning myself like, okay, there's a defensive player. I need to protect this. So like my first touch, I've already thought about protection, or I'm already thinking about my very first, what my play is going to be, right? I'm going to move this into open space because I can see space there. And so on my first touch, I'm already playing the ball because it cuts down on the amount of time that it gives the defensive player to set up defense. And it's hard to do. So that's one of the things that me and a couple of the other players in San Francisco, we've been practicing, which is just you get a pass and you have to do something with it instantly. Basically learning how to do something productive on that first touch, because your first touch is the most important moment. And like you were saying, at those higher level games, you don't have time. So you have to already be making a decision. You already have to have a game plan. It's like a game of chess, right? It's like you're thinking 3 or more moves ahead of what's happening. And if you're making those choices when you've got the ball right here, you're like, okay, now I'm going to do something. You're kind of already screwed.
Yeah, you're coughing it up, or it's time to just turn around and start over again and reset. And what
Yes.
that lets the defense go reset, takes the pressure off for a sec, and your chances of scoring after doing that are a little less than they were when you were in that offensive end collecting the ball.
But it's still safer, right?
Way safe. Keep possession.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you're kind of like, again, like, oh shit, I'm getting this pass, default protect it, right? Get your bike between the ball, and that might be moving so that you're at a different angle. You're not facing their goal anymore, right? You're facing diagonally or maybe more towards your own goal. And then that can give you a moment. So like, how do you create your own time? Or if you have the ability, how do you create a play instantly off that first touch? I think is super important.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I feel like we've covered a ton of topics. I'd love to just close out with a couple of tips, maybe some advice on how to approach learning a new skill. Because we've talked a lot about, how to change, like how to grip your mallet properly so that you can open up new options. We've talked about ball handling, using the broad side of your mallet in order to dribble the ball and getting really good with that broad side. We've talked about how to use the whole court. Sometimes moving forward means going home, but not jamming up in front of the crease so that you're all clogged up. We talked about the importance of playing the bike instead of the ball. When you're playing defensive number 2, catching the wave, surfing that pass versus trying to pick the pass. And then court awareness is what we've ended on. And I feel like there's so many little nuggets that I'm going to take away from this, and I think hopefully other people will. But I'm curious how you approach implementing this stuff in your own game, because I know it can be so challenging when you're going out to solo polo, trying to figure out, okay, I want to learn how to better dribble the ball, or I want to learn this particular skill. How do I go about learning that? How do I break it down? What are some things that you do?
I barely have time for pickup right now, and so I don't really give up the time in between games. I'll spend 5 minutes while everyone's kind of changing teams, working on some skill and just repeating that over and over again, and that's my solo polo for people who don't have time for solo polo.
I love it.
And I know no one's got time, and it's not always super fun either. It's kind of a grind, especially if it really is truly solo polo and you're just out there by yourself with the headphones in. But that is where I start with most of it. If I'm trying to do something new, that'll be where I'm trying to play with it. And then I might start maybe trying to pull it out in a pickup game here and there. And from there, it's if I can do that intentionally and successfully in a pickup game, then I might think about start trying to playing with that at a tournament, and going from there, it's, hey, does this work at the end of a Sunday on a tournament? Does it still need more work, or is it not tactically sound? Would be the other question, but it's got to kind of make it through a lot of levels of practice before it's something that can really be utilized when all of that pressure's on.
Yeah, exactly. I live really close to our court, so I do try and get out once or twice a week to do solo polo. One of the things I'll do a lot is just I'll have kind of a set of things I'm going to work on. I do a lot of just like dribbling the ball, and then what I do to make it more challenging is I pick up the speed. I want to pick up the speed until I start flubbing it, because you want to push when you're learning something new. You want to start in a comfortable range because you need to warm up your body, your hand-eye coordination, your central nervous system needs to come online. And so like kind of move till you start flubbing it a little bit, and then maybe you come back down to that comfort. And then you go back to kind of where it's uncomfortable. Because what you want to be able to do, especially with ball handling, you want to be really good at the fundamentals at speed. That's what really makes a good player. Sure, you can dribble the ball, but can you do it at speed? Can you do it under pressure? That's the difference between a good player and a really good player, right? Is the ability to be able to execute the fundamentals under pressure and at speed. And so I always try and keep that in mind when I'm doing solo polo. Is I'm like, well, I might not be able to recreate the pressure part, but I can recreate the speed part. And then it's hard sometimes to move from solo polo, something you're trying to learn, into a pickup game. Like I can do wheelies easily during solo polo, but I cannot for the freaking life of me pull one out at pickup at all. So my goal lately has just been like, Jenny, I don't give a shit when you do it. It can be the most dumb moment, but just do it once. So I'll try to really deliberately implement that. And even if it's terrible, right? It's terrible. I get beat because of it, whatever. That's fine. You're kind of like moving up this pyramid of skill level. And so you're not going to do it perfectly the first time you try and execute it at pickup. It might be a terrible attempt. You might dab, whatever, right? But part of it's just like trying to build it into your skill set and make it a useful skill. I'm curious, do you take notes at all?
I don't. I
don't know that many people that do, but
I internalize things and I'm hard on myself, and I feel like that's my internal note taking.
Dana's just over here like whipping himself. God damn it, Dana. We all do that. I have this year started using a notebook. So after pickup, I'll jot down some notes because one of the things I think is really useful for me is I try to notice patterns that I'm doing, both that I think are really good, that are working, and things that aren't. Something I noticed as a lefty, that the way I was defending Andrew when I'm forechecking, I was like, God damn it, every time I do this thing, he does this thing and completely passes around me. What is going on? And so I noted it in my notebook, and then I kept noticing it again when it was happening. And so I was just trying to observe the pattern. And so I diagrammed it out, and I was like, oh. Part of it, as a lefty, I was positioning myself on the wall in a really strange way, and he was able to pass behind my back wheel. So I was like, well, how can I position myself differently? So I diagrammed it off, and I was like, oh, what if I tried this? So I feel like diagramming is also like one of your friends. Like if you keep noticing something happening, just observe the pattern, take note, and then be like, what is something else I could try? And either you can come up with it or maybe ask advice from your club mates, somebody you respect. If you're like, man, this thing keeps happening, I keep getting beat. Can you please watch me in my next game and tell me what you see? Because I don't know what's going on. I think asking for advice is a nice way to do it too. Because they're a set of eyes outside of your own body, right? They can see stuff you can't.
That's a great point. One, keeping notes is awesome. I've never thought to do that at Polo. I've made a notebook for communicating ideas, kind of team-wise, but never just on, hey, how did I play at this point? And that's probably a really good idea. The other thing that you said that really jumped out at me is like the asking for advice from folks. One is kind of huge. There's very much a culture of, depending on what club you're in and where you are in the country and what your goals are and whether you've expressed those goals to people, some of the people who are in bike polo are in it to have a lot of fun and be there, and it's a social thing, and you're here with friends and you like riding bikes, and playing this sport is a lot of fun. And some people are really trying to go to competitive events, and their goal is to get more competitive, and that's not everyone's goal. Something I've, through trial and error, have learned is that I'm not going to necessarily offer advice proactively in person unless that person has stated to me that, hey, I would like your advice, and I'm more than happy to give it. I've always usually got something from watching a game with people, but I think that goes for a lot of the veteran players that have been around for a while and have stepped on that rake before and gone like, that's not my goal, I'm not trying to do this. And a lot of the veteran players around will be super happy to step up and offer advice and do those things, but are generally, speaking for myself, I'm a little reserved with that when I first meet a player.
I think that's a really good point. I think in San Francisco, we definitely take on a much more hands-on approach. It's like but I get what you're saying. I think that it's important to ask people what their goals are. If they're a new player, you might not know yet. But are you hoping to compete? Are you just here to have fun and just socialize? All of those things are the right answer, right? But if you're a newer player and you want the feedback, don't hesitate to reach out to your club and ask. Or if you've been to a tournament and you've seen a player that you really admire, reach out to them. You can ask outside of your club as well. You can ask if you went to polo camp. You can reach out to your coaches. I'm coaching someone remotely right now, and it's been absolutely fabulous. It's so much fun.
That's really cool.
So yeah, so there's tons of options if you're looking for feedback. Don't be scared to ask. Awesome. Well, this has been amazing. For anyone who is listening, definitely please share. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel if you have not already. Yeah, thanks everyone. This has been awesome. Dana, this has been amazing. And I can't wait for our next episode already.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Thank you, Jenny.